Hi, I'm Tom, and I'm continuing my Satisfactory game. I hope you like trains, because I like trains. Trains are one of the transportation modes in Satisfactory, and frankly, I think the best. Having said that, I'm not very expert in trucks, which are an earlier form of taking material from place to place. And I've never actually used drones at all because they come very late in the game, and by the time they're late in the game, I've already built out a significant train infrastructure which is usable and trustworthy for me. There are some arguments for using drones. For instance, they can be used to move small amounts of high import stuff across the map in isolation from everything else. And the big argument there, of course, is uranium, which is radioactive. I will have to see as I get closer. I still am not absolutely certain that I'm going to go nuclear on this playthrough, but perhaps I will. This video is all about Phase 3. And Phase 3 covers a lot of critical mid-game aspects, like, of course, trains, but also oil and the big products that come out of oil, essentially plastic and rubber, which then turn around to get used everywhere else. At any rate, now that I'm in Phase 3, and I had my steel and my concrete from Phase 2, it was easy to start laying tracks, so I did. I built track, both coming and going, from my main base out to the west coast. I did not actually take the track up the coast, because that's as far as I wanted to get at that moment, and also I didn't see the materials I would need to make it all the way through Phase 3 production. So I turned around and started setting up wires and also laying track to the east, which from the grassy fields leads you to a place called the Blue Crater. And once I got to the Blue Crater and planted a radar tower there to carefully see exactly what resources were available. So this is really the story of my Blue Crater factory. The Blue Crater is quite large. It has sides that you can climb and build off of in every direction. It has plenty of water for water pumps in the middle, and has access through various paths up into the hills to, of course, the grassy fields and the swamp and other places that lead north. As I realized that I would be building my factory all over the Blue Crater, I decided to build a single rail line that ran in a counterclockwise loop around the edge of the blue crater. I did this specifically because I was thinking that little trains could make short distance loops carrying goods from one part of the blue crater to another part. Of course, I still have some big factories and some very long belts, but I'm pretty happy with how the local train loop wound up working. It's fairly easy when you're building tracks and rails and foundations and items of all kinds to clip, that is, to have things go inside of each other. And it's also pretty easy, the way the trains are set up, to make trains that drive through the ground or drive through other pieces of factory equipment. And I don't personally think that's such a big deal. I don't care that much. I know that there are other players that care a great deal. They like the aesthetic of their game enough to be distressed when the train drives through something solid. But you'll see in these videos that my trains do drive through the ground here and there, drive through other parts of the map. And I don't really care that much. It's fine, and if I want to, I can go back and either adjust the position of the track, or I can put in a building around that part to kind of hide the times when the train drives straight through a rock face. It has been typical in my previous playthroughs to build a railroad track around the whole world. Well, the map is not actually a globe, but a large, roughly square set of land. And it has a central raised plateau. So building a two-way train track that goes all the way around that plateau is a really good start at connecting the entire world by rail, if you include spurs and loops and things. Also, I recently saw a YouTube video or two that showed me how to use rails to pierce the world geometry, essentially allowing a player to build tracks underground. That sounds pretty fun to me, and I think I'll probably wind up exploring that technique in this playthrough. This is a large plan of my big factory for Phase 3 that I set up on the website satisfactorytools.com. The plan covers pretty much everything that I really needed to complete Phase 3. I already had one of the space elevator parts, but I needed two more that were challenging to create. And to make those, I also needed to produce two other advanced items that would be necessary throughout the rest of the game, and really in the game that I was playing right now. One being motors, and the other being heavy modular frames. I I also needed computers, and I could use certainly interstitial parts as well. So the plan was the largest so far in this playthrough. Again, the blue crater was offering me all the space, all the water, and essentially all the materials, all the raw materials that I would need for this big plan. However, once I actually got into the blue crater and started studying it, I realized I did not actually have as much iron as I really needed to have. So I had to go looking northward and set up another radar tower before I found enough iron. And when I did, I realized I would most likely have to use a train to carry that iron ore into the blue crater. On the south side of the blue crater, my radar tower had found a normal node of iron ore, which I really needed. It wasn't a pure node, but it wasn't an impure node either, so it was well worth tapping. However, when I went to place a miner unit on it, I realized that it was actually secretly hidden far below ground in a cave. And the cave itself was designed to be very, very difficult to get to. Then I had to jump pretty far down to actually get into the cave. Along the way, of course, I was smart enough to lay electrical lines. And then I had to enter the dark cave, find the iron node, set up the miner, provide it with power, and also try to get the iron back out of the cave. I could have run the belt along where I had placed the electrical wire, but there was a possibility that if I sent a vertical belt tower far enough up, it would pierce the ground and come out in a place where I could extend the belt further. That required me to try it and see, basically. But I did, and it worked. I got the belted iron ore to go straight up through the ground so that I wouldn't have to make belts that traveled all the way back through the cave and up the backside of the map. Still, it was a giant hassle for 300 per minute units of iron ore. Hopefully, the rest of the map that I have yet to explore will give me a great deal more iron ore. Why do I only hope? And incidentally, why did I go into that deep dark cave? It comes back to the random mod that I used in this playthrough to scramble which ore was in which location. Not only did it scramble it, but I chose an option that made it not keep the original proportions of the various ore items. I could have chosen to make sure that the map, just like the original map, was primarily iron ore. But I found that pure randomization can be a lot more fun because it can provide more challenges. At any rate, that was what was going through my mind when I started the playthrough. And in this Phase 3 build, I did finally manage to scrape together enough iron, plenty of iron, to build my chain of everything I needed. There were some parts of my big factory build that I used sloops on. I think I'm getting better at that, but I'm still not using summer sloops to double the output of every single machine like I suggested I would in the first video. I'm being a little bit more strategic. I'm definitely doubling the output of the machines at the end of the chain, and I'm doubling the output of machines strategically. Once everything was working, I could get around to decorating, building buildings around all the different clusters of machines that I had built in my Blue Crater factory. And honestly, I don't have a lot of experience doing this kind of thing. I didn't spend a lot of my previous playthroughs bothering to put buildings around my factory equipment. So this was really a learning experience for me. I got to try out lots of new materials and pieces and parts that I never had before. I did quickly learn that I was enamored of the ceiling skylights, the glass floor panels that I could put on the ceilings. It let a lot of light into each factory, and I could see down into the factory from the roof. And there are lots of slanted ceiling pieces and roof parts that I had a lot of fun playing with, including slanted all glass roofs. I also took wall pieces and bent them over to make rounded walls and also slanted walls, which I thought were pretty cool. So here we are, finishing Phase 3. I'm going to pull the handle and get the lecture and watch the space elevator go up and add to the big space station in the sky, which is kind of the ultimate story arc for this game. I'm excited to move on to Phase 4. That is traditionally the aluminum phase. And it has always kind of confounded a lot of players because aluminum requires a bit more plumbing. But I never found it to be a particular problem. Aluminum seemed to always work well for me. And also, Phase 4 will give me some other cool things like jetpacks. Oh, did I say jetpacks? I meant the hover pack, which really is all about being more efficient at building larger factories quicker. If I put you to sleep with all this minutia, that's actually by design. This video series is designed to be relaxing and calming. There's absolutely no stakes, no danger, and frankly, very little excitement. but I'm still glad that you are here with me and are ready to move on to phase 4 with me. Thanks again for watching.